Before we get to your scheduled video, please remember that likes and comments tell YouTube to promote our work to other people, and subscribing to the channel tells you when something new drops. You can also head to the link tree in the description to peruse my books, join us on Discord, or support us on Patreon. You can get episodes of Journey of Wrestling and Violent Profiles early, as well as a load of other treats. Even just $1 a month earns you a name drop for being cool. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the show. Greetings and salutations, fellow adorable carnivores. It is I, Eric J. Chucky, joined as always by the boy.
Hey.
This is the Two Nerds Podcast, and it is the second episode of 2024, which is the 10-year anniversary of the Two Nerds Podcast. That's right, even though we do the thing that all white males do when they reach a certain age, we've been doing it for longer, and thus ours is cooler. Please don't look at the views. Speaking of views, before we get into the usual stuff, I just wanted to thank you guys for, a couple weeks ago, we did a WoW podcast, and it picked up some traffic, and it's a concept we will be revisiting in many ways, but that was really great. It hit 750-ish views in the first 2 weeks, and that's really special. What's even more special is you guys blasted the hell out of the Violent Profiles episode on Mace the Dark Age, which is the whole reason I made the series. It's at almost 800 views, and it's not even been a week. And it's got a way better like ratio and watch time, so it shows me you guys give a shit, and I really appreciate it. That's why that little spiel at the beginning exists. If you like, if you comment, if you subscribe, it tells me what video you were watching when you hit subscribe. I've got all these details that let me know what you guys want to see, and that helps us make more of it.
And it's really nice for me that especially the Mace the Dark Age video went well, because I really like it. I'm not involved in the Violent Profiles videos at all.
He provides emotional support.
And this has been a passion project of his for a while now, and it going well is really nice.
But we're going to be doing a lot of looking back in 2024 over the 10 years of the Two Nerds Podcast. Right now, today, we are looking back at 2023. You know what was true for 2023?
What was true?
That people were cool.
That was true. It's true now, actually.
It is true. I would like to talk about a few people who are, in fact, cool. That's going to be Rob, a guy from Ohio, Passion Killer 711, Destrucity KTL, and Harmony, in no particular order.
If you want to be cool, give us $1 a month on Patreon, and you will join the ranks of the cool. That is, legally, the only way to become cool.
Yeah, anybody else is described as cool. Even if we say on this podcast that a person is cool, that's just sort of like our opinion, man. If you give us $1 on Patreon, you become cool, and that's binding.
Yeah,
that'll hold up in
real.
court. Yeah.
Take that to a judge. That'll do something.
Yeah,
right?
he'll be like, "Whoa, you guys also listen to the Two Nerds Podcast?" And you'll be like, "Wow, I did this as a bit, but he knows that's so wild." And you'll have a moment before you go to jail for heroin trafficking or whatever. So yeah, this is our year in review podcast. We do one of these at the beginning of each year. We have for a long time now. I don't know if we've done it the full 10 years, but where we talk about not necessarily things that came out that year.
Things we did that year.
Things we experienced that year. And I find as people age, more and more year in review lists are a little bit like, well, I was way more into this. I don't care if it came out in 2019. It was what happened in my 2023. And that's how it is.
So it's our year in review.
Yes. So yeah, we start off with our favorite video game of the year because we are gamers at our core, even if it's a weird thing to want to be called now. It's also like, oh, I'm a breather. I love air.
Yeah,
oh, that's good. That's the spice of life right there.
It's the next stage of growing up, getting shoved into lockers for things, and suddenly everyone loves those things and they're cool. That keeps happening, and that's good. We live in a golden age.
Yeah. So I'm pretty excited for you, if you want to go first on this one, because the game that made your game of the year was an honorable mention twice over before.
Yeah. It was. So my game of the year for 2023 is Cyberpunk 2077, because in 2020 and I believe in 2022 it made the honorable mention. It wasn't my game of the year, but I played it. The game had struggles. It had problems. It's still not perfect, but it's finally gotten to its potential. And this is on this list Also partially for the DLC that came out this year.
And that's basically what changed it.
Yeah. And the newest version of the game is fun. It's great. The storyline is excellent, and it is probably the most compelling story game I played this year. You've heard me talk about it on the podcast a bunch, I'm sure, most notably in at least 2 other year in review podcasts. But I think this version is the version that CD Projekt Red gets to be proud of.
I would agree, even though I don't care for the upgraded talent system. I really thought I was going to, and then it hit, and I'm like, everything's too easy now. So I still haven't finished the damn game. But I can definitely see where there have been polish and improvements, especially in making it feel like a living city. So, I'm glad for you. You had some honorable mentions, I believe.
Yeah, honorable mentions were Elden Ring, just because I played a bunch of it this year. And Satisfactory is listed, but it's part of a whole oeuvre of, like, games that cause like, the part of my brain that really is satisfied by, like, incremental increases to tick over and be pleased. Things like Vampire Survivor, Path of Exile, and Satisfactory. They're games that I play, they are fun, but mostly they're just very satisfying to a part of my brain that is always going to miss, like, Diablo 2 and old school, like, WoW and stuff that had very tiny little incremental increases in power. With, like, little talent points, old school League of Legends talent tree, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
The runes. I like that stuff, and it all sort of scratches that same itch, and that was really nice for me. It was a good way to relax.
On my list, I actually played and beat a lot of games this year away from streaming, which is what streaming was supposed to accomplish, so I'm glad I got that much out of it, even if I don't really stream anymore. My games of the year were the Final Fantasy VII Remake and Persona 5, which was on the list last year, but I had played it for like a month. And I need to specify that means, like, I don't know, 5 hours. I finished it and played the bulk of it this year. Really blew me away. It's the longest game, like, start to end, because I played the gold version, that I've ever finished, I think. I've put more time into games, but it's been, like, replaying or, like, games like League or
Like,
WoW.
the longest single playthrough.
Yeah, the longest single playthrough I've ever gone through. And for most of it, I was pretty pleased with what went down. Final Fantasy VII Remake, however, other than, like, a couple of weird spots that were just, like, not to my taste, what an amazing game. 5 frogs. If you're in the Discord, you get it. If you're not in the Discord, you probably get it too. It's 5 stars, but with frogs, it's not that hard. I don't... My biggest complaint about the game is they didn't let me play Barrett more. I'm really looking forward to Rebirth. I do want to mention, I was still playing Marvel Snap. Am still playing Marvel Snap from last year's Game of the Year. That was among them. There were a bunch that year. I don't know. It's less like I'm really obsessed with this game, and more like this is a thing I do when I'm idling.
Yeah, it's an idle. Well, that's what it's for. It's like I'm booping game.
Play a couple rounds of cards while I'm booping. I know what you meant to say.
That's what I said.
I know what I heard. When I'm
that's what
getting my boops out.
Anyway.
Did you really say I'm booping?
No.
Okay. My favorite movie that we saw this year actually happened to be this year. Why don't you continue to lead off, my friend?
My favorite movie this year is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, I already love the Guardians movies. You've heard me talk about that a lot on this podcast, both this year, because we did a podcast on this movie, and in previous years. Guardians 3 is a heart-wrenching film, but I don't mean that as an insult.
It's an honorable mention on mine, but I couldn't make it my favorite because it literally made me feel dead inside for like 2 weeks. And that's not an exaggeration. I fell into a deep and profound depression. Upon post-game analysis, I think it might have given me like a really severe anxiety attack. The movie affected me. And hey, wow, if you're a person who makes movies, that's going to give you a little bit of a smile, I think. Like, wow, I did that. Oh, are you okay? Okay, cool then, yeah, oh, cool.
People like to clown on comic book movies as being facile or shallow. No, This is a very well told, very impactful, emotional story. And it wraps up one of my favorite movie trilogies ever at this point in a very satisfying and complete way.
Yeah.
Like, they really landed this plane. And they did it with style. And I loved it.
I just had a vision of a guy on a flight, just a regular passenger flight, who, when the plane lands, just looking around going, they really landed this plane. And the other passengers are like, there were no complications. They just did what they did, but they did it.
It's very hard.
Okay.
Don't want to overlook that.
My favorite movies this year were the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. That's not a hard guess. And I do also have to mention the Mario Brothers movie. I think Mutant Mayhem was a better movie in pretty much every regard. But Mario was kind of like a dream fulfilled. I've had Ninja Turtles movies. I have had Ninja Turtles movies that I like as much as that one. Maybe a little more, a little less, whatever. But man, we've been looking for a good Mario movie for 38 years.
And they did it.
They did it.
People like to clown on Chris Pratt, but he did a fine job. The movie was good. The movie was fun. If you don't like the Mario movie, I'd maybe just sort of take some time, walk outside, touch some grass, and rethink things. Because you're too wrapped up in something. Movies don't gotta be complex. It was simple and fun.
Yeah. We roll on to our favorite TV and/or web show. Man, this category used to be labeled this way because we didn't watch a lot of cable, but now nobody fucking does.
Yeah. Now, well, technically we watch streaming services, which are the new cable.
Yeah, they are. They're very similar, except for the honorable mentions. You and I both have Loki Season 2 as our favorite, which kind of surprises me from you. I didn't realize you enjoyed it that much. And as an honorable mention, Twisted Metal.
Yeah, Twisted Metal was fun. I believe we did a podcast episode on it.
We did.
Loki Season 2 was excellent.
I believe we did a podcast episode on it.
And you can hear more of our opinions on it in there. But my second honorable mention, the only time we differ, is I watch something newer, you watch something older.
I also watched the thing you watched, and you've also watched some of the thing I watched.
I've watched a lot of the thing you watched, just not recently.
Right.
So, mine was Dimension 20. It's on a separate streaming service on Dropout. You can find the first episodes of most of their seasons on YouTube. It is the company that used to be College Humor, and they're dropping that title. They're just Dropout now. And it's really fun D&D content. I've always wanted to like Critical Role and its ilk. I've always had trouble. I've actually mentioned on the podcast different times that that I've had trouble enjoying Critical Role. I eventually broke through and managed to enjoy some of it, but it's just not exactly. It never really managed to grab me long term. Dimension 20, whatever the difference is.
Sorry.
I'm not sure what he's laughing at.
She grabbed me long term. Ever since I heard that steering wheel joke, this happens to me. Please continue.
Maybe this is why Dimension 20 works for me. Other like live play, actual play D&D and role-playing game stuff can be pretty serious and pretty self-serious.
There's also not an editor on a lot of them.
Yeah. And Dimension 20 has two things going for it. One, it is a comedy show. As much as it's a, role-playing game show, it is a comedy show. And two, it is edited. Not a lot, but there's definitely bits cut out, and there's definitely some streamlining, music, that sort of thing. And it just gets over the hump of stuff to be something that I can really, really sink my teeth into. I like a lot of their seasons. I haven't watched all of them. Basically, I've been skipping anything that doesn't sound super my vibe. But special highlight to A Crown of Candy. That was really good.
Ironically, a game setting I've been wanting to play in or DM for ages, and I was really glad to hear it existed. To your point, and what another wonderful thing to happen this year, a version of the Co-Optional podcast is back. For those of you who used to watch Total Biscuit's show. Rippin' pepperonis, but for real, though.
Yeah, unironically.
Unironically. I miss him being on the internet a lot. But
Same.
Dodger and Jesse Cox got back together. They make the Geek Enders podcast. It's on Jesse Cox's YouTube channel. So far, it's been great. A couple of weeks ago, they were talking about, they had someone on who was talking about, yeah, you guys think Dimension 20 is great, and Brennan Lee Mulligan's so impressive and amazing. It's the editors. I'm there for the editors. They do crazy good work. I'm always like, who is cutting this show? And it really does add a lot.
It really adds.
Because there are times, I've only seen one series, and that was the Definitely Not Harry Potter campaign, which is a fine place to start. I just haven't been inspired to dig any deeper. But they really cut around what a lot is probably awkward, cringe for those of you under 30. It takes too long.
And the more raw, unfiltered things like Critical Role don't. And when I say cringe, I'm not being like a terminally online judgmental prick.
Even though we are both terminally online judgmental pricks.
No, in this particular instance only,
Yeah.
I am being serious. Sometimes live, most of the time, live actual play D&D makes me physically curl up into myself, and I have to go.
It gets a little embarrassing, especially like if a joke doesn't land or they stay way too long on a dumb bit, but you know.
But so, like, Dimension 20, really, it has all of the pieces put together perfectly to be the version of this thing that I want to like, that I get to like. And that's really awesome for me.
Yeah. And they do good stuff. I've been watching Roseanne, a show headed by a terrible person, unlike yours, which just seems pretty nice guy.
They're nice guys.
But, you know, it's a part of my youth. My girlfriend never really got into it, and that made me surprised because we had similar childhoods, and this is a farcical echo of my childhood. There's nostalgia is not even beginning to explain it. I lived a lot of these moments for better or worse, and
You and I both grew up, you know, lower class, rural-ish, and, you know, struggling to a certain degree, and so Roseanne has a lot of themes that we resonate with.
I lost my train. Oh no! Now that I am the age that the characters in the show are for the first half of the series, it's also providing an interesting contrast to where I am now compared to where they are then.
Yeah.
You know, the things I do have to struggle with, things that I thankfully do not.
Yeah!
It's just been a really fun walk down memory lane, but it's been a big thing for us this year.
You guys will have it on in the room, and I'll usually catch an episode or two as I'm over on my computer. It's really fun.
I didn't always hate Joss Whedon. Here's proof. You guys in the comments who are always commenting that.
Comment
you
that.
Totally, don't definitely exist.
Comment that, thumbs up, thumbs down, give us an engagement.
Yeah.
It's delicious.
Yeah, it's great. So this is a complicated topic. Favorite RPG character you played? We tend to say that NPCs count. It's been an interesting year for our role-playing. And you hear that, and I'm sure you think, they haven't role-played. Not so.
We've roleplayed a lot, basically weekly, all year.
There's been some exceptions,
There's
especially
been missed
holiday
weeks
stuff,
here and
yeah.
there, but basically, I imagine if you added up all the missed weeks, it was maybe 4 or 5 missed sessions.
Especially since there were a couple of times where we played on the weekdays. I think 3 times. So it might have only ended up being 2.
But whereas before, a lot of our games ended up being fairly short time frame, and we would end up playing a lot of different characters. This year, that has not been the case.
No. We played a game of mine for, I guess, the first half of the year, and then the second half, well, we'll get into this in a couple of things, but we've been playing another game of mine, a couple of categories, for the second half of the year, and still are. And then at our other game that you have been running, it's been the same game since the beginning of 2023.
Yeah. So White has played, because, you know, we're adults, we only have so many friend groups, we've only really got the 2 games going. White has played exactly, like, 1 role-playing game character who is an NPC this year, so he wins that section by default.
Yeah, there's another one I played for, again, like 3 sessions, and she's cool, but like 3 sessions, unless they're amazing out the gate, is not enough to get a character to elevate them to that stratus of, oh yeah, that was my favorite thing I did. So please, lead.
I have mostly played this year an orc named Sights, to simplify, former bandit turned adventurer slash surrogate dad for the 2 player characters I am playing with.
Who are fully adults and can be responsible for themselves.
Choose not to, however. Sights I really love because I like playing characters who have like a specific mindset and a specific way they approach things, because it helps me get into character and helps me make decisions in character. Sights is a very pragmatic guy, and he's not. When I was younger, I played a lot of very clever people, wizards and detectives and that sort of thing. Sights is not that. He's a very straightforward person. He would describe himself as stupid. It's not exactly true, but it's the way he perceives himself, and I like playing that because it's a very concrete mindset to get into. So he's really fun. I also really enjoy being the dad of the friend group in Doses.
It's too much responsibility all the time.
I wouldn't want to do it in real life. In real life, I think hanging out with people who are not full adults who can't handle their own business, I find that incredibly draining and sad. So, but doing it as a part of like a fun role-playing game is fun. It's a fun little comedy bit that I can do.
Right.
My honorable mention is Juice Goblinson. He's an NPC I played for exactly 1 session. He is, for anyone who's on the part of our podcast who is here for the wrestling content, he is absolutely what you think he is. He is a goblin who is Juice Robinson. He has a sidekick, an undead, a white specifically, named Jay, who is his like muscle, and he carries around 2 golden pistols. He is amazing. I loved playing him. He will be back at some point because Juice Goblinson can never die.
So for a lot of the DMing I was doing in the second campaign of the year, I was converting old modules from like advanced Dungeons and Dragons to the system we're using today. And I had to do that pretty far in advance. And we alternate weeks on which we DM. So I had already had all this set up and ready for the next session. And we go to the session, and he brings out this NPC, Juice Goblinson. And I am chagrined, not only because this was in my, still hadn't turned the corner on enjoying Juice Robinson, but also I had set up my honorable mention, the necromancer Irvine Christopher, who is an over-the-top, rock and roll style, self-involved, a little over-the-hill, self-important jerk, the likes of Chris Jericho. He also has a white companion, a very tall man with a blonde beard who doesn't talk a lot because of his heavy lisp. And he has since been populating his holdings with a lot of other people. He seems to like to have just like a stable of friends around him.
Irvine Christopher has been back a couple times.
Well, it's more like you kept going back to his house because...
Why wouldn't we?
He lived on top of something very important. But that's only my honorable mention because it's, Chris Jericho's an asshole, and that's not recent events. He just is.
He's a wrestler over 40. They're all assholes.
Yeah. But he's just an NPC. It wasn't even like someone I was.
That's why
to play.
they're honorable mentions.
Yeah,
right?
It was a bit character that I put in as a joke that we've gotten to make a couple times. The character I've been playing all year is Cole. He's halfling. He was a druid. I hate third edition, fifth edition druid. So he's a bard now.
Which you like a lot better.
It's just not stupid.
Tell him about Cole.
He's a little shitlord. I mean, I use that as shorthand, but like he's not necessarily the stereotype you assume. He doesn't.
He's not a Kender. He's just mouthy.
Yeah, he's mouthy, and he knows oppression, so he gets really tired of people who think they're important. Whether they actually are or not is aside.
He has essentially zero patience for pretension or propriety. Speaking as the DM for Cole, essentially the easiest way for me to make Cole make trouble is to present someone who seems to be taking themselves seriously.
He got lost in the Feywild for most of his childhood, so he has absolutely, like, it can get worse. And, I was poor and I was lost in the Feywild. You have no idea, you wiener. He voyages around with what was once part of his class feature, but is now just sort of a thing. Oh no, it is still part of his class feature. A giant construct, a spirit from the Feylands that is inhabiting a plant monster. I fully made the character, stats done, and everything. Before I realized I had just made Rocket Raccoon and Groot.
I was there for that moment. It was really funny.
Yeah, and
I was looking like is this a bit? Is he messing with me, right?
I don't always get it. I'm dim sometimes.
But yes, he is Rocket Raccoon and Groot. But Cole isn't as Cole's much more well adjusted than Rocket.
Yes. He's trying to make things of himself. He's trying to have goals. But it's hard. He's hard to talk about because a lot of his stuff is intrinsic to the game, and you guys aren't here for that unless you are. Let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to talk about dumb shit we think is cool. I don't like to.
That is essentially what we do here.
We don't get self-indulgent.
This is our big self-indulgent podcast of the year. And warning, this is going to be the big self-indulgent year for the podcast because we're doing a lot of looking back.
Right, but like we still try to talk about stuff that's relevant to people's interests and not just, Sarah.
You had to be there stories.
Starfield. Anyway, speaking of which, Surprise of the Year, also known as the I Was Wrong Award.
Why don't you lead this time?
All right. I had a bunch, and they were usually small stuff. Like, yeah, I'll drop all this money on a set of really nice headphones because I'm definitely going to be playing Gotham Knights with my friends all the time. Friends that don't live in this house. Guess what I didn't do? But small stuff like that was a lot of big surprises. There's a lot of stuff happened in the wrestling world that was like, wow, I didn't see that coming. But I think the biggest one, I mentioned the Cyberpunk thing too. I really thought that was going to be enjoyable to me. No, the biggest surprise, the biggest I was wrong was that Starfield was going to be good.
Yeah, you thought that, huh?
I did. The bar was pretty low, is the problem. It was not a high bar. Just make Skyrim in space.
They did that.
They sucked the soul out of Skyrim.
Well, they sucked the Elder Scrolls out of Skyrim.
Well, and just like they replaced it with was barely cooked. We will maybe eventually do a Starfield podcast. It seems less and less likely as time goes by, and my counterpart is still halfway through the game.
I don't know that I'll finish it. I had fun with the game. I liked the game, but...
And that's a lot easier to say because we got it for free with Game Pass.
Yeah, I Game Pass liked this game.
Yeah.
If I had paid $70 United States for Starfield, my feelings on Starfield would be different.
I don't know that I Game Pass like this game. Despite that, I sunk a lot of time into it. Because please understand that this is a lie I kept telling myself as I played.
It's just a little boring. It's still good. It's still good.
Yeah, it's just a little tedious. It's just a little bad. And then my brain did this weird thing where it was like, you need to finish all the companion quests in Starfield and all the faction quests. Otherwise, you haven't really beaten it. Bitch, I didn't do that in Skyrim or Oblivion or Morrowind, certainly.
Yeah, I'm not sure why your brain did that.
I don't know either, but finally, I played through Sarah's was the last thing I did, and it let me go. Because it was so disappointed in writing. It's Elder Scrolls writing is not avant-garde, it's not amazing, it's not astounding. even Fallout 4, which is probably their best written game in terms of like dialogue and characters and stuff.
Bethesda, yes.
Bethesda's the best written game. I think Starfield is way, way, way worse. I don't think Starfield's writing is as good as
The Outer Worlds.
It's bad for different reasons. That's The Outer Worlds is a different level of. They're making a second one.
Made enough money to make a sequel, I guess.
But yeah, that was my surprise. Let's talk about your surprise.
I had two. One is not positive, but certainly the surprise of the year, and one is positive. That's the honorable mention. Because the first one's way more surprising. Vince McMahon actually sold the WWE. Now, you may remember last time we did this, 2022's year in review, was Vince McMahon retires. I never thought he would. Turns out I was right, actually. No, I was right. He didn't. He came back like Palpatine, but then he sold the WWE, which
and then they all but squeezed him out of it.
Which, right and just, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely, much like him retiring, would have put a fair amount of money down that was never going to happen. But I was wrong. He actually did it. Wild stuff. The positive one, the honorable mention, is Eddie Kingston. Eddie Kingston fucking rules, and the early AEW podcasts where we didn't like him or cringe, ignore us, he rocks.
Yeah, really happy for the guy. It's been a hell of a year for him. Yeah. I could talk for so long on how bad Starfield is. So let's move on. Let's move on to our favorite activity, or the thing we did the most this year, because you, my friend, often measure what is your favorite thing by like, well, I did this the most willingly. Like, okay, you go to work the most, probably, or sleep. That might not be your favorite activity. Maybe you're booping. But willingly, that you have elected to do the most.
We are what we do,
sure.
As it were.
Sure. You can pretend that your favorite thing is X, but you're always doing Y.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I try and be honest about that sort of thing. My favorite activity, and the thing I did the most this year, I would say, is honestly, I read a lot of new stuff. So I basically have been reading a lot my entire life. Since around whenever the first Harry Potter book came out, really, was probably the first thing that grabbed me. He heard the pirate again. You can't see it.
No, I wasn't the pirate. Please continue for the sake of us all.
Fair enough. But I read a lot all the time. For the last few years, I've been reading mostly fan fiction because, like, I mean, essentially, it's free and there's a lot of it. And there's a joke in our household that I possess an infinite fiction maw. Just a bottomless hole where stories go. I consume a lot of content, and I would beggar myself if I had to buy all those books. So,
there's also a theory that you put forth that holds a lot of water about why people in general read fan fiction, and it's because it's more stories you can enjoy without much of a buy-in.
Yeah, that's generally why. That is sort of a baked-in assumption that I should explain. My general theory as to why fan fiction is so popular is that reading a new story with a new world with new rules, especially in any sort of speculative genre, sci-fi or fantasy, is a buy-in. You have to learn. You have to learn the rules. You have to learn the world, the terms. You have to sort of onboard all this stuff to understand what's going on. And the characters, even in more grounded genres, you have to learn about the characters. You have to learn their idiosyncrasies and who they are as people to sort of absorb the story. Fanfiction, you basically have to do none of that. All that stuff is already baked in. You already know it. So, all you need to learn is the changes. It's like learning a song versus learning, like, a new remix of that song. You already have the base knowledge. You just have to sort of iterate on it now. It's much easier, mentally. But this year, I found a great place online called Royal Road. I've known about it for years. I just hadn't gotten to it yet, essentially. Where there's a lot of news stories, where there's a lot of, like, you know, original fiction that is also free.
Speaking of that, actually, on Royal Road, you can read my latest novel, the first book in the 4-book Red Company series, in its unedited form, but hey, it's free.
Or you can get the edited version on Amazon.
Yeah, it's a link tree in the description. I would appreciate the $1 dues.
And it's a lot of it's a way to really enjoy, and it's also, I mean, I'm never gonna DM in front of you people, so I can just tell you, a lot of what I do in DMing is I steal stuff from other people. So
and it's what you should do in DMing. Sorry for the sharp there. It's the advice given by a lot of, you know, really lauded DMs. Steal stuff.
And so it gives me a lot of stuff to steal. Makes DMing easier. The other thing I did most was YouTube, because that's listed every year because it's the TV I watch.
It has been, not 2021. That was web serials. And then not the first couple years, but every year since then, YouTube has been on your list. I made a new RPG.
You guys can't have it yet. Well, unless you're on the Patreon.
Yeah, there's a Patreon tier, $10, I want to say. You can see pre-release content. It's, if you're clever, it's playable. If you're not, that's the worst part of writing an RPG for me, is like, this is how you roll dice. Or this is how you run a game. I don't want to write that. My brain doesn't want to write that. So we do everything else first, and then I drag myself over that finish line. Although if you're there and you want to go on the Discord and ask me questions, we have a Discord for RPGs and stuff. I'd be happy to tell you, okay, this is how this works, this is how this works, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, it's called Wizards in Whites, named by my good friend here.
Yep.
I don't know if you guys heard about this, but
D&D called the fucking Pinkertons on somebody.
Yeah. Other wizards of the coastal variety got a little snippety for Magic the Gathering thing, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also D&D tried to, like... Wizards of the Coast has been doing some fuck shit. So we're ballooning out.
Well, and it's been for years. Why would I make a fantasy RPG? I've got 5th edition.
It's right there. It works just fine. Why would I get a new car? My car works.
But after about a year of really solid frustration with 5th edition and a lot of what happens in it and how it works, and after all of these negative events, please understand, I still enjoy D&D. I'm still happy to play D&D.
I am, in fact, DMing a D&D campaign right now.
I might bitch about it more because I invented something I like better, but, you know, it's a fine game. But yeah, it gave me the urge to try and do something better, and I knuckled down and built an RPG system, and it's still going through playtesting, and the playtesting phase is going to be the longest, and I'm still adding new shit. There's not nearly enough monsters, and I like, you know, different designations and classes and subclasses and stuff like that. You know, filling out the world in a way that a new edition of D&D doesn't have to, because all of these magic items have existed.
Because D&D is fan fiction. It's all already baked in. You know the song, you just have to learn the new iteration.
Right. And hopefully your mouth doesn't become a dubstep remix like mine just did. Wizards in Whites, however, is a little fresh, and it uses a D12 and...
much like his other RPG, Giallopunk.
Yes, but this one is way more similar to the fantasy Dungeons and Dragons style. We've even got Vancian spellcasting, if that's your...
Because the Dying Earth series is not owned by Wizards of the Coast.
It sure isn't. Yeah, that's what I've been doing. You can find more about it on the Patreon. I did a bunch of deep dives for a while there. And if you want to know more, I'm always around. Let us know in the comments. Hey, we could do a podcast about it if you really wanted. You gotta let us know in the comments.
Yeah, we're not going to do that without
prompting. No, that's again one of those self-indulgent things. Anthem of the Year. I meant to listen to yours, and I didn't.
You have. You've heard it.
Oh, okay.
Mine is... I've never actually said this out loud, so I don't know if it's IBDY or IBD. And Ratboy, Who's Ready for Tomorrow? Some of you may notice that's from Cyberpunk 2077. It is it is something I listened to basically as I was. I really got into listening to the Cyberpunk soundtrack. Not so much when I was playing the game, because until very recently you couldn't do that unless you were in a car, and I don't spend a lot of my time in a car. But when I was just sort of hanging around, iterating on stuff for DMing and that sort of thing, I would listen to it. This song is an excellent hype song. It is the song I play when I mow the lawn. It is the song I play when I work out. At least when I start. It is a very good song to get energy up for starting a thing.
And it's working. You're absolutely shredded. Yoked. He's like the shape of a Dorito. And his muscles are vascular.
He's lying to you. I'm as fat as I ever have been.
Nope. You don't know that.
Wow, that's some deep stuff to put on the podcast, bud. But it's a great song to get energy up and ready for the day. I don't have it as my alarm because I end up hating every song I make an alarm out of, so I'm not going to do that.
I don't have that problem. In fact, it was easier to pick what my song of the year was. Actually, I don't think this one is. But because they were my alarms, I listened to them every day. The Persona 5 OST is, wow, really, really good. I remember when I was but a bab.
Thank you for not saying young boy.
No. I would never do such a thing. I fantasized about video games being advanced enough that you could have like a song with lyrics or something that sounded like modern music, as a battle theme or what have you. Mm-hmm. I love chiptunes and old school music like that. I do. But that also would be cool.
Nobuo Uematsu can paint the Sistine Chapel with crayons, but it is nice to have more paint.
Yes. Yes. And the Persona 5 soundtrack is astounding. I don't have these written down, but Beneath the Mask and the main battle theme as my alarms all year. The first one kind of wakes me up gently. If I dismiss that alarm, the second one wakes me up with yeah! It is about time to change them, but I'm certainly not tired of them. However, I would say Rivers in the Desert is probably my favorite song from that soundtrack. You spend the entire game, if you don't switch costumes, listening to the same battle theme and going, wow, this is really good. How could they possibly do better? And then Rivers in the Desert hits, and you're like, oh.
That's out.
Holy shit. I do want to have an honorable mention, though. A couple years ago, we went to BitGen. And saw Cowabunga Pizza Time and had a religious experience with a cereal pizza in the crowd. I recently bought all their music and made a mix CD of it that I've been listening to in my car for the last 6 months. And I recommend everything they've done. I really like them. It was one of these things where I didn't think I liked how they sounded at first until I spent some time with it. And I'm like, oh no, this is really good. What was I talking about? It's very like a mixture between like classic butt rock and punk, and like
two genres that do seem like they fit together.
75% of their songs end with the classic cartoon series riff, and it's all just stuff about being cool and being a ninja and eating pizza and living your life and being good, and it really gets me up. But specifically, Denim Till Death, fantastic performance with a flute solo.
Excellent. You love a flute solo.
Also, I'm really happy for Rat Boy being named Rat Boy.
Yeah, Rat Boy's a great name.
Yeah, that's great. I'm satisfied by that a lot. Moving on to our next category. We're winding down, guys. Thank you for being here with us. Favorite, my mouth.
Favorite wrestling event of the year.
Thanks, pal. I don't have much to say about mine, so I'll go first. I have Full Gear ? This is a rough year for wrestling for me. For like most of the summer and a little bit of the autumn, I didn't really care. Like, I didn't hate it or anything. I was enjoying my time, but I was more filled with anxiety about what was going to happen at a wrestling event. And when a pay-per-view would end, I'd be like, oh, good, it's over. We can move on to something else now, maybe, as opposed to, yeah, I'm jazzed. So I have Full Gear written down, but like, I don't know.
That's fair. Mine's All In. I liked that show. It was fun. I'm not going to let stupid assholes and their inability to be professional ruin that for me. That show ripped. Its main event finish is my favorite thing in wrestling in the last 10 years.
It's okay, buddy. Like, the count was, that was a rough count of the people there in attendance. It wasn't the turnstile. I don't know that was asshole behavior. I think it was an honest mistake. Or at the very least, it's not worse than Vince McMahon.
Tony Khan is free to fudge all the numbers he wants. Vince McMahon is a demon. You gotta fight evil with evil.
Vince McMahon is the bar that Starfield had to clear, and they didn't manage it. They tripped over that bar, turned around, picked it up, and gently, slowly shoved it into their own ass. So that leads us into Wrestler of the Year. Why don't you let us know who the Wrestler of the Year is?
His name is Maxwell Jacob Friedman. I'm not doing the whole line. It's not my line, it's his line, and he would call me Mark and a poor for doing it. And he would be right to do so. I'm a huge MJF, Mark. Not even gonna lie. He's a generational talent. That's not just him. That's not just a fun thing he says. He's absurdly good, especially for how young he is. It's unreal how good he is for the age he is. It's absurd. He's the best currently working pro wrestler. Unfathomable how surprised I was at this point in my life to have a wrestler I like this much this quickly. If he's not actually gone from AEW, I'm not going to believe that until he shows up on Raw. But if he's forced to go,
MJF shows up on SmackDown. The boy.
It's not really it.
Hang on.
It's not really it. Let's see where they're going with this. But his world title run ended, though it now may be shaky, though some of it may have been due to unfortunate injuries and such. Was excellent, and he really just kept a lot of AEW afloat for me on months when otherwise I was struggling to a certain extent to maintain interest. I hope he's enjoying his time off. I hope when he comes back, I know when he comes back, he'll have something new and interesting to show me.
The fascinating thing is, and I hope it doesn't, but if the absolute worst case scenario happens with his current injuries, he might not be eligible for Wrestler of the Year for 2024.
I hope he heals quickly.
I hope he doesn't have to do what he doesn't want to do, but regardless. I decidedly picked people who aren't MJF just so that every year isn't us just going MJF again. That's not interesting. So understand that I recognize the man's greatness. And I think it's also an interesting contrast because the people I have written down, one of them is Gravity. And that's like, I don't know, a quarter a joke answer. But, I really love his gimmick. He's a talented wrestler. He's very green. He's still got some,
But a fun gimmick can go a long way.
It's a really, really fun gimmick, and I think he could have a lot of fun with people, and I'm glad that they had him wrestle Pac. That was very important to me, and I'm glad they put that together. If you haven't seen Gravity's gimmick, he's a spaceman, and sometimes he does stuff in slow motion like he's in space. But he's also a luchador, so sometimes he absolutely blitzes. It's great. It's fantastic. But the wrestler I do have down as my actual favorite of the year is Penta. And when I was reviewing this list to see if I needed to update anything, I'm like, where the hell has Penta even been? Why did I pick him as my favorite wrestler of the year? Forgetting the incredible series that happened at the beginning of this year, basically. And the guy doesn't have to do much to show up and be absolutely astounding. He is... I don't have as strong of cleavings toward wrestlers as I did back in the day because a lot of them got old enough to disappoint me. But man, for the time being, Penta steps in the ring and wows me. He's got so much charisma on the mic, no matter what language he's speaking. He's got swagger. He seems like a cool guy outside the ropes. I don't know what more you could want from a professional wrestler. Screen time, and MJF got that. So,
yep.
Eddie Kingston is also a good shout.
Eddie Kingston would be an honorable mention.
I'm not as fond of every one of his matches, so...
That's basically what makes him the honorable mention.
I'm glad he settled his Chikara shit, though. I care.
Goddamn right. I still care.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of self-indulgence, this is the last category, the podcast of the year. That's not other people's podcasts. That's ours. Feel free to leave yours in the comments if you made it this far. I'm curious to hear what you liked. Go back through, maybe listen to a couple again. Get our view counts up.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Or just subscribe to the Patreon. You know, that's fine too. What was your, well, we shared it actually, favorite podcast of the year. Why don't you take the lead on this one?
Our favorite podcast of the year is AI-generated football mascots. It follows in the grand tradition of, like, nostalgia in the Kunz and mobile gaming in Junior of being some of the content we have the most fun making is bullshit wacky ideas that one of us suggests. There's a beat like an empty panel in a 3-panel comic, and then the other one goes, "Fuck it, yeah."
It was fun. It was stupid. I really like some of the silly mascots that the AI came up with, and some of the real ones. And people take football so seriously. And
yet they're little men's.
They're little guys.
Silly men's. They're so silly.
Guys. Yeah. It was a good one. My runner-up, my not even honorable mention, it deserves respect, is the episode of Two Nerds Don't Go to the Movies that we had to delete because there was no audio and you guys never told us.
You watched the podcast, the whole thing.
There were views on it with view time. No one ever mentioned in the comments that there was no audio.
It's a podcast, guys.
It's just it was a static image of the kid from Stranger Things with hearts around him. What is wrong with you?